Roger, go for deploy.
Welcome back to Adventure Fit Radio, guys. So, today's episode is with a man by the name of Abel James. Abel is the fat-burning man, for those of you guys who have heard of his podcast or read some of his books. Tommy, you're strumming the guitar there. Are you planning on...
some background music there?
I don't know if that's...
It's like interlude stuff.
Show up anywhere, because we got no microphone near the guitar. But
interlude intro.
It's good. It's putting me at peace.
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So this show, guys, Abel James is the fat-burning man. So Abel was a guy who wanted to change his life. He was a pretty overweight guy who went to a wild diet, he calls it, very similar to paleo, just really clean eating kind of thing. And Abel has changed a lot of people's lives with the reach that he has, and he's also built himself a bit of a multimedia. That's kind of pissing me off, man.
Oh, is it? What about if I just go... We'll put the guitar away.
I'm only joking. It wasn't pissing me off. But,
I'll put it back in there.
Abel James, so he's built himself basically a little empire with through his books, through his podcast. His podcast was number one in rated number one in health at one point for 50 countries. So he's and it's pretty much just because he's a genuine guy.
Oh, isn't he? That's the overwhelming thing that I got from speaking to him. It was genuine. Like, I felt like he was my dad.
He was a genuine Menine.
He was a genuine Menine, yeah. And he's got a rig.
Yeah,
he's a genuine Menine with a Renine. Shit.
Yeah, it was sicko. I had a great time talking to him because I thought a lot of these people that have got such big followings and podcasts and a multimedia kind of thing, some of them just don't seem...
They don't seem genuine.
No, they don't seem genuine at all. And
he was really good.
Abel was a ledge.
Yeah, he was really good.
He was a nice guy.
Weird name though.
Yeah, Abel. It's like he was born in 1800 BC or something.
Like Babylonian, Mesopotamian times.
Yeah, he has like one mate, I think, Cain or something.
Yeah, Cain. Yeah, that's right. And Goliath.
Yeah. But people say that Bill's an old name too. So
Bill's a shit name.
Shit name?
Oh, shit. Sorry, man. I forgot.
Shit name.
No, Bill's all right. Do you ever get...
Sounds a shit name, but...
Do you ever get William?
Nah. Lots of my mates call me William.
William?
Yeah, Yorma.
Yorma?
Mate, I've got probably 30 nicknames.
Yeah, you do.
Doc, Wop, Blop Doctor, William, Yorma, Gandalf, Wolverine, BLT, BWT Limited.
BWT Limited. I can see that. So that's 8?
Yeah, and 22 more.
22 more, of which I can't disclose right now.
No, I got a lot of nicknames. People call me, Johnny Bordenaro calls me Yorma.
Shit tooth?
Shit tooth, yeah. Been called that as of 10 seconds ago.
The weightlifter?
Yeah. Thanks for that.
The cork?
El Corco.
And Mahatsmanov. This is way off tangent.
I got some nicknames, but some people call me William. Frey, my best mate, calls me William.
Oh yeah,
he actually just calls me William.
Just William.
Just for
William
bit of a piss take. It's actually not my name though.
Well, yeah.
My name's Bill.
Your name's Bill, isn't it?
Yeah,
on the birth certificate? Yeah. See, mine's named
Bill.
Thomas on the birth certificate.
With a H?
With an H, yeah. Thomas.
Thomas. Yeah. Right in the Thomas.
Thomas, like within the Thomas.
Why did you say that with 12 lists?
I don't know. There was not even H's in those words.
I know. All right, so this is... anyway, guys, you'll love this show with Abel. We had a chat about all things health and fitness, and it was a really good discussion. So, guys, this podcast is actually brought to you by True Pride. So True Pride are a wealth creation service who work with ambitious individuals and families who are looking to take control, worry less, and get ahead. So we're working with the guys at True Pride, guys. They're getting our budgets down so we can save more money during the weeks, me and Tommy. And it's working out really great so far. So head to www.truepride.com.au/ADVF and you'll get a call with Craig, booked through our link. And then if you decide to go ahead with it, you'll get your $297 joining fee waived when you book the call. We're also brought to you by Carve. Carve are a VA company in the Philippines, guys. So that's who I get all my assistance from. Carve are absolutely great. I've got my life back through Carve. And if you want to check out their services, then head to www.carve.ph/ADVF. Get yourself an assistant. We're also brought to you by Adventure Fit Travel. Tommy, what are Adventure Fit Travel?
What are Adventure Travel? They are a travel company, mate. Now we got some good travel. What's the word I'm looking for here? We got some good holidays coming up, don't we?
Yeah, we
Bal,
do.
Mech,
Yeah.
Phil,
Yeah.
and the US.
So, guys, if you want to check out any of Adventure Fit Travel's trips, head to www.adventurefittravel.com. Use Use the code radio.
Oh yeah,
to get 10% off on any and all trips. So that's new. We actually never had a discount on the podcast. So podcast listeners get radio, and you'll get 10% off a trip.
And also join the mailing list.
Yes, join the mailing list. Mm-hmm. And here's the show. Alrighty, guys, welcome to Adventure Fit Radio. So I'm sitting here today with Abel James. Abel is from the Fat Burning Man Empire. He's got a really interesting story. So we're going to dip right into it here and get into it with Abel. So Abel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Abel, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of background, who you are, where you're from, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to be healthy and adventurous, and it's been an up and down rocky road to get there. But I started out in the backwoods of New Hampshire, which is almost Canada, still in America, but almost Canada. So really cold winters, but it was pretty cool because it was very rural. It was an old farm, and I got really sick when I was an infant. I had a temperature of about 106 degrees Fahrenheit, which is I was almost dead.
Yeah.
And they didn't know quite how to fix that. And my mom was a nurse at the time. Now she's a nurse practitioner. But that started to bring her into the world of alternative health and holistic healing and using food as medicine and plants as medicine as well. And so she started making her own tinctures and medicines from the backyard. And so I grew up on, these smelly tinctures and weird bombs and all these crazy plants and stuff like that. And over the course of time, when I went to college, I wanted to excel, and I took on some loans and then got out of college. And for the first time in my life, I got a big fancy job and I got this big fancy health insurance and wanted to take advantage of it as much as I could. And following my doctor's advice for the first time, he put me on a diet which was, largely low fat, stay away from dietary cholesterol. And that was the first time I ever really thought about going on a diet or something like that. But he said, given my genetics, that was what I needed to do, and give up red meat and a lot of anything that tasted good, pretty much butter, chocolate,
all the fun stuff,
all the fun stuff.
What a jerk!
And over the course of the next 6 months, and then the next year, I was on about a half dozen different prescription medications. I was about 30, 40 pounds overweight at that point. I had my blood work was really bad. It looked like I had high triglycerides, on the way to type 2 diabetes, and I was just kind of falling apart. And I was in my early 20s, and this was the first time I'd ever really tried Western medicine as a way to heal myself or to prevent disorders and diseases down the road. And so I kind of realized that it wasn't working. But it wasn't until I came home one night and the apartment I was living in at the time burned to the ground. I lost everything in that. And so all I had left was, my big fat face in the mirror. And I knew that I needed something to help get me through that and kind of a project. And I realized that it was definitely my health. And as soon as I went back into the research and, for a while there, I kind of went with the big insurance companies and my doctor's advice. And that really went against the way that I was raised holistically, by my mom and dad on this old farm in New Hampshire. And it really took me re-embracing that and also combining it with a world of physiology and research as it relates to science. My background is in research on the brain and psychology. And so I decided, when I made it my project, I'm type A and overachiever. And so I really dug into it. And it didn't take me long to realize that everything I was doing to try to be healthy was wrong. And so as soon as I basically went back to real food and I wasn't afraid of fat anymore and kind of turned the conventional advice on its head from a dietary perspective, and I stopped running so much. I was running, like 30 plus miles a week. All of a sudden, my health came back. I dropped like 30 pounds in just more than a month. And all of a sudden, I was in like great shape again. It felt awesome, better than I ever had. And I was like, this is great, but I'm really ticked off that I had to go through all of that other stuff to get there, because I realized that all the things I was doing to try to be healthy were actually making me sick. And so it really ticked me off. And that's why I decided to start up Fat Burning Man, which is kind of this silly name for an idea that we should take our health into our own hands. And we can do that with real food and by embracing our ancestral movements and really getting out there and going on adventures and reclaiming our lives. And ever since I started that, it just kind of took off. And then I started doing books, and then I was on a TV show about it. So health has always been a huge passion of mine, but it's just one of them. And I think it's a jumping off point for anyone who wants to make their life better. Then, I try to help them eat better first, then move a little bit, and work on the stress and the sleep. And all of a sudden, after you've done that, your entire world, your entire life can change. And it brings people down some really cool paths.
Absolutely. It's definitely the most important thing to a happy, healthy life, I suppose, is your health, or a happy life, I should say. If you don't have your health, you don't really have anything, obviously.
Yeah.
So the question that I have, the most interesting thing, you touched on the fact that that you went directly against your doctor's orders. Now, I don't know about you guys in the US, but Australia recently, about a year ago, updated its healthy food pyramid. And for the most part of my life, growing up, I looked at the healthy food pyramid. I think the base were your complex carbs, your breads, your rices, your pastas.
Right.
Next was basically the whole chain was out of whack. But that was what was recommended from our dietary perspective, from doctors, health, schools.
Same in the States.
Yeah, and the funny thing that I always, now, like looking back on it, the funny thing is I don't understand how that can actually get through. Why is that able to get through in Parliament, or whoever gets the red stamp to produce this healthy food pyramid? I don't understand how it hung around for that long with all these crazy concepts that weren't even true to our bodies. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, for better or worse, we tend to follow a lot of bad science or science that's not even there in the first place. And so when it comes to looking at the research in the 1950s that came out, that a lot of this anti-fat stuff was built on, that one particular study by Ansel Keys has been disproven over and over again. Basically, it was relying on falsified data. Any data that didn't fit into his set that basically said that fat was bad, he threw out. So everything left said that fat was bad, and any country that eats a lot of fat is full of fat people who are going to get fat and sick. But that's totally made up. And then there are all these other studies that happened after that just made the problem even worse. And so there's one way of looking at it where the food industry took over and it's trying to kill all of us, and there are a lot of conspiracies about all of that. But I think it's more likely that when you look at the system, when you look at trying to feed a country, right? When you try to feed Australia or America, you're not really thinking about individual human health. You're thinking about, how do we get food out there to people? How do we grow enough? How do we distribute it? How do we make sure that it holds up to distribution and lasts a long time on the shelf? And so we were, we thought that fat was bad, and then we started eating a lot of corn, soy, and other, modern wheat, these monocrops, and essentially the base of the food pyramid, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We started eating a ton of that stuff instead of the traditional foods that we've been eating for a very long time, which is, foods in their whole form, fat or not, carbs or not, whatever, eat real food. We started eating all of this junk hyper-processed food, which is essentially the human equivalent of rat chow, or dog chow, or whatever, like kibble.
Yeah.
And we stopped eating real food. So when that happened, it really started to hit in the 1970s. Then things got worse in the 80s and even worse in the 90s. And then all of a sudden by the 2000s, we're in this huge mess where more people are overweight and obese than not. And now it's not a problem where we're trying to feed the world or feed countries, especially in developed countries. More people are dying from eating too much than eating too little.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem that we're faced with now. And I don't think we're going to solve it by looking backwards. we really need to look forwards and be like, all right, we were wrong about that.
Yep, that's right. How do we get ourselves out of this? So I think one of the biggest problems is probably the word fat. Obviously, people, by and large, when they think of somebody who's obese, the word they use is fat. So the fact that fat is actually really good for us is probably not very good for its branding, so to speak, if you know what I mean. It probably didn't help. But what I wanted to ask, so you talk about your diet and the book that you wrote, The Wild Diet. So how does that differ from paleo, ketogenic? Tell us a little bit about the wild diet in particular for those listeners that don't actually know.
Yeah, of course. And it's a little bit of a misnomer. At the beginning of my book, I redefine what diet is supposed to mean. And it means the foods that an animal or a human would habitually eat, a species appropriate diet. It's the foods you're eating every day. It's not this type of thing where it's the cabbage soup diet, where you're eating only cabbage soup or starving yourself. Mm-hmm. I think in most of the world today, when you hear the word diet, you think of this a fad, or you think of starving yourself, and it really shouldn't be that way. So I called it the wild diet because, to me, what wild means, what it represents, is nature. And when you want to heal your body, when you want to get in the best shape, you need to not fight nature the way that Western medicine might do. You need to embrace nature. You need to feed your body the foods that are appropriate for it, that it's been digesting effectively for a very long time, that we're well adapted to eat. And basically what that means is, when you're looking at the foods that you should be eating, it's unprocessed foods, unrefined foods. And it's not necessarily being, like I said before, it's not being afraid of any particular type of macronutrient like fat, protein, or carbs. That is a dramatic oversimplification, right? The idea that a can of Coca-Cola would be the equivalent in some way of a can of tuna is ridiculous. So it's not about eating less necessarily. It's about eating the right foods. And so if you're building, I like to make it rubber meets the road and practical for everyone. So the book itself kind of walks you through that, and it's very narrative, and I tell a lot of stories that put it into perspective. But the plate looks like this. The vast majority of the food on your plate should be vegetables. Green veggies are great, salad greens, things like that. Cooked or uncooked, doesn't really matter. Have at it. Have as much as you want, and cover it up with a good tasting fat. Could be olive oil, macadamia nuts, or various nuts are a type of fat as well. Can be great. Avocado. The coconut is another great fat that you can put on veggies or cook with veggies, in coconut oil to make it taste great. Bacon, even. If you're eating animal foods, which would be the other part of the plate, maybe a quarter of it, or about a palm-sized portion of protein. You want to be eating from a healthy animal if you can help it, because if you're eating sick animals, in a lot of cases, the fat of that animal and the meat of that animal will contain a lot of toxins, hormones, and other junk that you really don't want. Sure. And when you look at any industry that's selling, conventional feedlot, factory farmed beef or pork, or chicken even, when you're looking at those, the one thing that the people who are raising those animals try to do is get them as fat as possible, as quickly as possible. And so the way they do that is by feeding them, the same food that we're eating, a lot of grains and soy and GMO, various GMO types of just poor quality food. And then they supplement it with synthetic vitamins. So very close to enriched flours that you see in a lot of processed food. And when they do that, all of a sudden the animals will just keep eating, and they never really stop eating. And that's pretty close to what you see as humans. So the plate is mostly veg. Then you've got a bit of protein, about a palm-sized portion of protein. You've got some healthy fat over it or with it. And then if you're looking for fat loss, most people benefit from dialing down the starches and certainly the sugars. You want to kick out almost all of the sugars if you can help it. That's easier said than done, but if you want to lose fat, that's a quick win right there. So the starches, for myself, you asked how is my approach different from paleo or ketogenic. I eat quite a bit of sweet potatoes and rice and sometimes regular potatoes. I'm not afraid of starches or anything like that. I don't eat much sugar. I actually probably eat a lot less sugar than a lot of people in the paleo world. And one of the reasons for that is because, if you're training like a CrossFit elite athlete, then you can put up with a lot of sugar, and actually it might help you, perform better in the short term. But if you're looking for brain health, long-term health, and things like that, then it's dialing down the sugar and then eating an appropriate amount of starch is the way to go. So the plate, just to revisit it, mostly veg. We got a little bit of meat, and we've got it comes from a healthy animal, and then we've got some fat over that, and then you have a starch as well. And so I like to also combine that with intermittent fasting. And so that's where some people like to call me ketogenic, which I am sometimes because I'm fasting, right? And so I can definitely put up with going on a day-long hike and just eat one meal. And so I do that like pretty often. And so there are a lot of similarities between this. Like paleo, I love that it's embraced the real food thing, although it's starting to change because you can walk into a health food store and see all these like sugary processed food bars that are like totally paleo because they only have honey in them.
It's crazy, right?
So I think, one of the reasons I wanted to create the Wild Diet is just to make sure that we had a message that was clear and wouldn't be kind of like poisoned by a lot of the marketers who have come on board, who ruined, the other way of eating for us a long time ago. And pretty soon they're going to ruin almost anything with a name on it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I hope the word wild would be too difficult to tame. And even I don't want to own it. You know what I mean? It's something that represents nature. We need to honor that in order to take our health back.
Absolutely. That's great. So what about, have you actually explored things like the ketogenic diet in a longer sense? Have you played around with being ketogenic over a long period of time? And if so, how did that work out for you? It's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I have. And it's definitely exploding in popularity these days. I like to push to the edges of almost anything I'm trying, So when I was doing some high fat experiments, I was eating like 80% of my calories from fat, sometimes even more than that, combining it with intermittent fasting. And for me, like I said, I had a lot of health issues in my early 20s, so I still need to keep an eye on that. And I noticed that over the course of a few weeks, the longer I went with like very, very low carb, the less I felt like me and the less I felt like exercising, going on adventures, and I didn't want to, I lost my sex drive even. I was starting to feel, that's a big.
No good.
That's in. See you later, kid.
Get that out there.
I'll tell you what, as soon as I had a sweet potato, it was right back.
So all you do, just when you're going really hard, you just have a potato and you're on.
Sweet potatoes like rocket fuel.
Yeah, that's right.
Back in action. But anyways, so yeah, I like, there could have been a few things that were happening there, and I've tried it a few different times, and I think in short doses or for a few weeks at a time, it's a very natural state to be in. But as soon as you start feeling like I was talking about, a little bit less of yourself or just low on energy, it's time to probably do a refeed. So the thing that I like to do is have a ketogenic days. I might have like several ketogenic days throughout the week, and then I'll have higher carb days as well. So I like carb refeeds, and I tend to eat most of my carbs at night. But I think that the overall point is, you want to be someone who can burn fat. You don't want someone to be completely addicted to carbs and sugar. And so if you want to make something taste good, add fat, add bacon, cook it in bacon fat or whatever. And that's totally something you can do when you're ketogenic, and is harder to do if you're eating a ton of carbs. But I can say when I was on that ABC TV show, which you guys didn't get over there, but in the States it was pretty big. You might be able to find it online. But on that TV show, I used...
Is that the one that was My Diet is Better Than Yours? Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool.
So my guy, he started out at 352 pounds, and he was 52% body fat when we first started. Wow. So he was a big guy, and it can be really... So the goal was to lose fat as quickly as possible. And for someone like that, especially, he was almost 50 years old, and so he couldn't do a whole lot of exercise. And the way that I like to look at it is, if you can't exercise that much, then really low carb or even ketogenic can be super effective for losing fat, because you don't feel all that hungry.
Yeah.
But what you give up is the energy to exercise a lot. It's a lot harder to work out like that and do heavy lifts and stuff like that, especially for an extended period of time.
For sure.
And so he lost... Over the course of 14 weeks, I got him down to less than 30% body fat. And he had a few carb refeeds in there, but for the most part, he was keeping it lowish carb and eating all real foods according to the wild diet. And it was a massive improvement. He got off all of his prescription medications by week 3.
Wow.
He lost 16 pounds the first week, 87 pounds in 14 weeks, and he got his life back. He looks 20 years younger. He lost 10 inches also from his pant size. He went from 48 to 38.
That's awesome.
So it can be a really useful tool.
Hey guys, so just a little break from the show. We just want to talk to you quickly about True Pride. So
Do we ever?
Calm down, mate.
Sorry, I'm excited.
Calm down. We True Pride are a wealth creation service, guys, who have a bunch of different levels of wealth creation. So what they'll do, me and Tommy at the moment are working through our budgets. So we're at the stage where we're itemizing everything that comes into and out of our bank account. So there's a program that these guys have called Cash Fit that help us do that, and then you can look at where you're spending too much money, where you want to allocate money for savings, and how you can get your money down. Basically, you try and keep the same exact standard of living, but save yourself $150 a week. So that's $600 a month, and Craig's program at True Pride costs you $97 a month to do this. So what have you been doing with it, Tommy?
Well, mate, like I said before to you off air, I actually saved. So normally I spend about $125 on groceries, but this week I spent $47.
Yep.
And it wasn't necessarily through Craig and I going through sort of like specific things to buy. It was more of an understanding of having all my budget perfectly lined up, so I knew what I could spend here and what I could spend there and what I could spend there to keep my spendings to a minimum. And I'd seen in my month that I'd actually be spending a lot more on shit that I don't normally spend, like physio, and I spent a bit of money on shoes. I needed new shoes. I don't normally spend that sort of stuff. But I was looking at all that, and I was going, oh, okay, I could probably find a few cheaper options here in the shopping. And I did. And it's just the great thing about Craig and True Pride and Cash Fit, which is the software, is it just keeps you totally accountable by putting all your expenses in very, very specific things. So like, even more specific than food. So it's more restaurant, it's more this and that. So I think it's fantastic, and I've got a lot out of it already. So
all right, cool. So guys, if you want to check out True Pride, head to www.truepride.com.au/ADVF, and you can book a call with the guys there. And if you decide to join, you'll get your $297 waiving fee. $297 joining fee waived. We are also brought to you by Carve. So Carve are an awesome company, guys. They're a bunch of guys in the Philippines that specialize in getting you a VA, a virtual assistant, or getting projects done over there. So I have 3 assistants. Me and Tommy have one for Adventure Fit Radio, and then I have 2 full-time assistants for Adventure Fit Travel. So that's 120 hours of work that gets done for Adventure Fit Travel, all at the cost of about $6 an hour US, $8 an hour Aussie. And it's made me be able to step back and try and grow the business rather than working in the business all day, every day.
Yep.
And it's it gets your life back, or it helps you upscale your business. And
it keeps you more focused on the shit that we can do. We can do better rather than the little nitty-gritty stuff. So, for example, like the guys overseas help us with actually getting the shows out there and editing the show and this and that, and stuff that you and I don't want to do. It's more the stuff that...
Just the shit that we actually don't want to do.
The shit that we hate. So if you don't like shit, guys, give Carve a call.
So head to www.carve.ph/ADVF to get 10 free hours on any project. Back to the show.
Abel, how do you feel about those massive weight loss implementations? Like, obviously it worked really well with this guy you're talking about, but things like The Biggest Loser and stuff, how much do you think... an actual lifestyle change is important as opposed to just a really quick diet change? And what do you say?
What a great question, because I'm all about the lifestyle thing. And I found myself in this position where I was basically the show approached me saying it would be all about health. And then the show itself kind of turned into something similar to The Biggest Loser. But the good piece of that is if someone really, so the guy I was working with, for instance, he was on a hospital bed for 13 months. Wow. He was in a serious car accident, and he had to get a metal plate put in and around his neck to stabilize his neck, which was broken. And then that became infected with staph, which turned into a systemic staph infection. So he gained all this weight and was super sick. And, looking at his blood work when I first started working with him, he had 4 pages of medical conditions. And so in an instance like that, if I'm working one-on-one with someone like that, which obviously I don't do very often, but I could work that closely with him. And I think in an instance like that, you want to lose that excess weight as quickly as possible.
Sure.
You really do. But for most people, they don't have the ability or the luxury to work with someone like me really closely to make sure they're doing it right. It's not easy if you're going it alone. So for most people, I recommend the slow burn, right? I recommend the lifestyle factors. And if you want to lose a lot of weight super quickly, anyone can do that in a wide variety of ways, and most of them are terrible. There are a few that can work really well, especially if you're working closely with someone. But for the vast majority of people, it's all about remember that plate I just described? Make that your meal, or at least 1 or 2 meals a day. And yeah, you can cheat, you can eat other stuff sometimes. But if you do that over the long term, that's what's going to keep you alive and healthy forever. It's not losing weight. Like, you should only have to lose weight once. That's the way that I think about it, and then the rest is all about implementing this lifestyle that you can live with and be happy with and feel nourished by, that gives you energy to go out and crush it in the real world. And that's all about the tiny little habits every single day. It's not about losing weight. Losing weight isn't something we should have to do as humans. It's just what we're faced with today.
Definitely.
For sure. Hey, Abel, how much do you think there's a correlation between mental health and what you're putting into your body?
It's everything. My background actually is in psychology and brain science. That's what I studied back in the day. So mindset really is everything. And I think for a lot of people, the weight loss, the health, the fitness, that's a hook that gets them in to start making some serious changes with their own lives. I mean, you guys are traveling around the world living it up, but you know that it's a process to get there. You have to release a lot of your baggage. And in a lot of cases, I think, something like lifting weights is a great example, or doing sprinting or something physical, where if you're lifting something, it's not necessarily like, I'm loving this the whole time and everything is great. It takes discipline. It takes like showing up, whether you like it or not, whether you're tired or not, getting in there and doing it. And, people may not want to go and work out, but no one has ever regretted a workout.
That's right.
No one's ever regretted a good workout, unless you get hurt or something. You know what I mean? But no one ever regrets, like, when you're covered in sweat and the endorphins are flowing, you're like, yes, now I'm alive.
Yeah,
and
that's so true.
When you can do that every day, it trains discipline. It trains, willpower. Those are muscles too. And when you can get a control of your body and your health, all of a sudden it frees up all this energy to do more with your life. So it's all about the mindset.
It's a good point, isn't it? It's funny. I've never heard anyone at the end of a workout go, you know what? I'm very upset right now. But it's the same thing with your diet as well. I've never heard anyone regret eating a nice healthy meal, except we, as humans, creatures of habit, we always fall back into doing things that we ended up regretting, eating potato cakes or fish and chips and things like that.
I never regret eating potato cakes.
Yeah, I never regret eating that as well. Who am I kidding? That's just for show.
Get out.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to leave.
Hey, so how come, I know we kind of touched on this very, very first thing we spoke about, one of the very first things we spoke about at the start of the show, but how come you think when people go and see a doctor, Abel, and they've got different ailments, maybe a whole number of things that's going wrong with their body, how come a lot of the time the doctor will never refer to another allied health, man, I'm not speaking very well today. Another allied health professional.
It's because of those potato cakes.
another allied health professional in a dietitian, because that never really happens, and I don't understand why. Because the doctors, by and large, doctors are studies of medicine, but they're not studies of nutrition, like yourself.
Right.
There's so many people that could help, could be helped by a diet. A dietitian rather than just a GP who's going to prescribe you drugs. I think that has to change. When will that change?
It definitely has to change. Well, I think the best advice I can give right now is don't go to your doctor for diet advice. Yeah. When you look at it, the things that doctors are trained in are very specific to medical conditions and procedures and drug interactions and things like that. In a lot of cases, my mom is from, the industry. So she's had her feet in both worlds, kind of as a holistic herbalist and nutritionist and practitioner. And also, in a lot of cases, she's had jobs where she's worked in the ER or she's worked directly for a doctor and with patients. And basically that world is you have to see as many patients as possible, as quickly as possible. And there's no time for chit chat. There's no time for explanation. You just got to get them in there, get them out, hopefully send them out with a prescription for something. Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the system right now. And so I think instead of trying to make that system better, let's just try to be better on our own. Because it's not about, like, once you're at the doctor's office, you're usually sick anyway. Yeah. And so I think it's mostly about, like, why don't we try to be healthier now, to improve our energy and ultimately, save a ton of money down the road. Because, if you come down with type 2 diabetes, last time I saw, I think basically what you're expected to pay over the course of your lifetime is somewhere around $500,000. Yeah. If you get cancer, not only is your life potentially ending, but also super expensive, right? So if you start to take yourself out of the present moment a little bit and imagine, not eating that salad because it tastes as good as a hamburger necessarily, but eating those veg to make sure that you're going to be alive for 20 years longer than everyone else, right? And that you don't have to go to the doctor. So in the past 5 years, I really haven't, my numbers have been so good that I don't need to take any drugs. I don't need to do any procedures. And I certainly don't need to go to my doctor to ask them for nutrition advice. Because that was another weird thing is it's, looking back at all this, I've had a number of doctors over the course of my life, and some have been really good. There are great doctors out there, but most of them are overworked, seeing way too many patients, and overweight themselves. They're definitely not shining pinnacles of health like you'd expect. So if someone is unhealthy, don't take their health advice.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine if there was a nutrition class in school. Imagine how much money that would save the person who's going through primary school or early grade school, and then actually saving the government in the long term as well. You would imagine, right? Because all the amount of the money that the government pays for all these heart disease and it's all just through education. And it's normally people that know about nutrition have either from a high level sport or something that takes their sport relatively seriously. But even in that, in a lot of cases that's not the case, that they'll have a really great diet, or somebody that has gotten to the point where they absolutely need it, where they're grossly overweight or have got health issues. It's not normally just, I'm just living a day-to-day normal life, but I want to be eating the wild diet or a healthy diet or the paleo diet. It's normally one aspect or the other. For the general populace, it's not really ever explored.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not. And unfortunately, myself included, it takes a lot of people a personal trauma or a sickness or something where they just, reach the lowest of the low moment. They hit rock bottom and they're like, okay, now I need to make a change. Right. And I wish it were where people could just kind of dabble in it and be like, wow, this is totally worth it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe you guys can help us get there. Right. I think when a lot of people join their first CrossFit box, it kind of does that. The cult hooks you in, and then all of a sudden you do start caring about nutrition and your body, and hopefully that lasts for life. And so I think it is these kind of small community things that can get people in there, and then they can do it whether they've had a trauma or not.
Absolutely, and that's obviously part of the reason I started Adventure Fit is because I wanted to not make people fit and healthy, but make people happy and see the world, and that goes hand in hand with the fitness that we do on our trips in particular. So the next thing I'm talking about is people like yourself and I suppose to some degree Adventure Fit Travel, and we're doing our part, and obviously our podcast, we're raising a lot of these questions. You're on a whole nother level. You've built yourself a kind of small media empire, Abel, and it's great because it's able to reach so many people and make such a difference. How have you been able to grow your media and your brand so that you can reach so many people? It's a chicken and the egg. What came first in terms of your books, your podcasts? How did it all happen?
And what sort of food was the chicken eating?
Well, okay, so when someone like reads my bio or goes through all the different accomplishments I've experienced over the course of my life, it sounds like they all happened at once, right? It sounds like, all right, Abel shows up and these are all the things he did. But for me, it's much more about, like, it's been a 32-year journey for all these different things. And I put a lot of work into a lot of stuff that's worked and more work into stuff that hasn't. And so, you know, I started after I got sick and started healing my own body. I wrote a quick little manual that I printed out at the Kinko's down the road. I printed like 20 copies of them, and I gave it out to some of my friends and family and like the local chiropractor and a few other people. I'm just like, listen, you know, if you want to know the things that they don't want you to know about health and make it super easy, here it is. Just like read this and see what happens. And so a bunch of my guy friends thought that I was extremely uncool for doing that. And
Don't worry, mate. Everyone thinks I'm uncool.
But then it was kind of neat because over the course of the next few weeks, a lot of them, you know, they would kind of like flip through it. And then, of course, they saw what happened to me, where I went from being overweight and sick to being like super healthy and energetic and pretty much ripped, that having the body that they wanted. They started doing a little bit of it. And then, you know, if one friend, he'd lose 20, 30 pounds and start looking like Brad Pitt all of a sudden. They're like, what are you doing? And then, you know, they would happen to another friend. My dad lost 20 pounds. My mom lost 20 pounds. Eventually my dental hygienist lost 60 pounds. And so I was just trying to get the message out there, and I started up my blog. Then I realized that we don't need more bloggers, but I'm also a professional musician, so I know how to use a microphone. And so I set one up, and I didn't know what a podcast was, but I started one.
Right.
And then that kind of took off. And then I was on, I did the book, and I've done some apps, and then I was on the TV show. But all those things, they build on each other. And I think for me also, it's like I don't want to be working on one thing, just like iterating the whole time. You know, I didn't want to just like be a blogger the whole time, or being someone who's printing stuff off at Kinko's and like handing out physical flyers to people about like, wouldn't it be great if you could
just be that weirdo on the street corner if that was the case, I think.
Yeah. So I think it's all about like finding those new ways that you can get the message out there. And for me, like I never thought that I'd be on reality television. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that I was, because not only did it help Kurt, who really turned his life around, but also millions and millions of people watched the show and, you know, have since started listening to my podcast or come to the blog and really gotten into that, or not even mine. You know, they'll find someone else's that resonates even more with them, that they can use to change their health for the better. So I'm all about, you know, I'm not doing it for the money, and I've said no to a lot more money than I've ever said yes to. And I think that's really important too. You have to go throughout this whole process, get rid of all the noise. A lot of people, you know, especially you get a little bit of success, and there are a lot of people who come a knocking, and you let the right ones in, and you're trusting with the right people, and then you just keep your eye on the ball and keep on moving forward. And we're really excited about where things are going. And I know the next few years are going to be super interesting because we're taking on a few new challenges.
Beautiful. So we'll get you out of here shortly, Abel. We're going to go to a few questions to wrap up from me and Tommy quickly. But I just had one final question, and that's what's your greatest achievement in your eyes so far in helping people with what you've been able to set up?
Boy, what a great question. Greatest achievement. I really think about it as helping other people, and as humans, we're not really well equipped to understand what that means at a high level. So what I mean is that, you know, I'm talking into a microphone right now, but I'm talking to you guys and thousands of people. It's like, I can't think about that because it doesn't make sense to me. And when I was, you know, on TV, it was like, yeah, I was in front of the cameras, but it comes out, you know, 6 months later, and then all of a sudden millions of people are watching it. But for me at that point, it's kind of old news. You know, I'm always excited about the next thing. So I think the greatest achievement would definitely be learning more every day. Because the longer you do this, the more nuance you find, the more like everyone's a little bit different, but you get more confident in the things that you know are right, and then you keep learning more stuff that can help move people forward. It's been super interesting, right? Like I talked about paleo before. When I started my blog, it was shortly after that I went to the first ever paleo conference, and I went to another ancestral health conference at Harvard, and it was a really counterculture, super small group of people. And, of course, Rob Wolf, Mark Sisson, Chris Kresser, a lot of the people who are big names now. Dave Asprey also, he was like a weird dude carrying around a backpack with his own coffee.
He was the guy sending out the flyers on the corner of the street.
I mean, he's still really weird. It just works better now because now he's successful and eccentric. But we were all there, man, and it's great to. I think the accomplishment is starting to see this break into the mainstream, where all of a sudden you see like a Holiday Inn commercial or something like that, and they're talking about real food and how important it is. And you see McDonald's talking about real food, and even if they're lying, it's still important because that's the message. You want to eat real food. And I think the greatest accomplishment is not just mine. It's like this whole movement is starting to spill over into an arena where it's big enough that people can actually find it. And that wasn't the case when we started. It was definitely, we were in our own little corners of the internet, and now it's starting to be out there, and I love that.
Well, fitness and health has become popular, and it can't be a bad thing. So, anyway, Abel, I think what we're going to do now is we're going to quickly go to 6 from 6, which is 3 questions from me, 3 questions from Tommy, just before we wrap up, and then you can talk about where people can find you and stuff.
Right on.
So, first question: are you a well-travelled man? That's not the question, but you are. You told me earlier in the show you've been all over the place. I remember. So my question is, I'll answer that for you. My question is, what's your favourite destination on the planet? Can be big, small, can be country, can be continent, can be town.
Absolutely. It might be a tie between Bali in Indonesia and Peru.
Ooh.
I would say Sacred Valley in Peru.
Yeah. Two of our highlights for Adventure Fits calendar next year. You'll have to come along on a trip one day, Abel. We're going out to Bali next April, I think, and then doing two of my favourite spots as well. Absolutely, especially Peru. I absolutely love South America. Hey, next question is your dream destination. Anywhere, can be anywhere.
You know what? I haven't been to the Philippines yet, and my wife and I.
Well,
yeah,
we're going.
My wife and I planned a trip to go. I know you guys are going there too, right?
Yeah,
we're actually going to be going there next month, which should be totally awesome. I'm going there so we got married like a year ago at this point, but we were so busy then that we didn't go on to a honeymoon. So that's where we're going to go in just a few weeks. And we're pretty stoked for that. But I would love to come on one of your trips.
Yeah, nice one. All right, and lastly from me is any books that you would recommend to people that have kind of changed your life or the way you've thought about something?
Oh, yeah. I read a great one from a guy named Derek Sivers, and it's called Anything You Want. Mm-hmm. You can read it in less than an hour, and it's basically, so his short story, he's been a mentor from afar to me in a lot of ways because he comes from the music world. Yep. He had a company called CD Baby.
Oh, I know the guy.
Yeah, he grew it to.
I know the story.
Yeah,
he grew it to I think 22 million. Basically, over the course of time, he was trying to keep it small, but accidentally it grew to like this big operation because he wanted to help musicians. Mm-hmm. And when he sold it, he made sure he sold it to the right people, and he donated all the money to charity. And I just thought it was like such a great counterpoint to you see all these like venture capital people who are like make lots of money and raise more money and then sell stuff. And his approach was like the exact opposite. It's like, let's keep it small as possible and help people more. And that's such a great message today.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, that's it from me. Tell me, what do you got?
Alrighty, Mr. James. What's something you like to do in your spare time when you got some downtime?
Well, I play a lot of music.
Yeah, I wanted to venture into this. So are you an axe man?
I'm an axeman. Yes, I've been playing guitar for years. I have 9 of them. I have another one coming today. Actually, I recorded an album a few months ago with a lot of the guys from the Tim McGraw band. Even though I don't really play country, it's more like rock and folk, and funk and stuff like that. But that came out super fun, and I also sing and play the saxophone. So I'm a really weird dude.
Saxophone.
Yeah. Well, when we're all in Peru, we'll get together and have a sing-along.
Let's jam. Let's harmonize.
I don't know if you know, but Bill is actually an incredible beatboxer, and he's
right?
No, I'm actually joking. He's an appalling.
To beatbox the other day. He told me to lay down a beat. I said no. Yeah. I will not do that today.
Yeah. For someone that's so outgoing, I've never seen a more negative.
Straight up refused.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's fantastic. My second question, Abel, is biggest inspiration or role model you've had at any one point in your life?
That's another good one. I think for a weird reason, Jerry Seinfeld is has been like a personal hero, and I'll tell you why. It's in the 90s, Seinfeld was like the biggest thing ever.
My favorite TV show of all time.
You could have bought, if you wanted to, he could have sold out super hard then. You could be buying like Jerry Seinfeld Kleenexes still today. You know what I mean? Like he could have done that, but instead he's like, you know what? It was a good run. We did the best we could. Now I'm moving on to the next thing. And he also, for his show, Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, the story that I heard is he was turned down by every single network. They're like, no way this will ever work. And so he went to this like weird little, crackle thing online. And all of a sudden, it was the biggest show that came out, and I think he won an award for it too. So it's like the idea that no matter how successful you are, if you don't play the game with a machine, they'll spit you out.
Yeah.
But he's been able to some degree, it seems like, maintain his integrity and also follow his own path, and that is so important to see in someone, because there's nothing worse than seeing one of your heroes sell out. You know?
And finally, mate, if you could invite 3 people, dead or alive, to a dinner, who would they be and why? And you absolutely can invite the Subway man. Talk about carbs. I lost 400 kilos from eating.
Man, that is a good one.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ben Franklin would have to be there because he seems like a really weird dude who's into some cool stuff.
Yeah.
When it comes to, let's see, who's alive? I think Seinfeld would have to be there too. And then I guess I would also ask, probably not for political reasons, but more because I'm curious, I would probably want to sit down with Obama and ask him how the world really works.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a really interesting question. If you knew that they were going to tell no lies to get an ex-president of the United States, that would be really interesting. I would like to know how much power they actually have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how cool is that, like, conspiracy that they have that book of all the conspiracies of the last sort of 100 years or whatever it is,
I don't know about this conspiracy book.
You don't know?
No.
Oh, I'll bring it over next time. I've got it.
This is the book that you've got,
This is the book that I've got, that I've written up. Yeah. Can you imagine that? So there's this joke, actually. Jerry Seinfeld, Obama, and the Subway man walk into a bar. And the Subway man actually... Nah, there's no joke.
On that note, Abel, let's get you out of here. So where can people find you? Social medias, websites, where do they head?
Yeah. So social media, you can find me easy enough under Abel James, and Fat Burning Man, for the most part, is my handle. And then easiest place to find me online for sure is fatburningman.com. And we're redesigning the whole website with some super cool stuff and tons of delicious recipes. And that's another big thing. It's not just about, like eating in a healthy way, but also making it fun. So my wife and I, for the past like 5+ years, we've been working really hard to make things like chicken parmesan and cheesecake and chicken tikka masala and things like that not only taste good, but be really good for you too. So
awesome.
If you want any of that and the recipes, check out fatburningman.com. And then, of course, the podcast too, of the same name.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Good stuff, Abel. Thanks a lot for your time, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was great fun.
Cool.
Okay, and that's a wrap.
All right, guys, that was the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some stuff out of there. We're going to bring you guys more nutritionists coming up in the following weeks. We've got a nutritionist from Melbourne. We've got one from America.
Dietitian.
And she's a dietitian. That stuff's really important, guys, and it's something that Bill and I have a very, very much of a vested interest in. So if you want more of that stuff, like Abel James, let us know. So a couple of ways you can do that. Number one, you can jump onto iTunes, go to Adventure Fit Radio, and actually just give us a bit of a like, give us a rating and review. Guys, we can't tell you how important the ratings and reviews are for us. They just bump us up in the world and
make us feel better about ourselves.
Because I don't feel great about myself. I look in the mirror every day and go, Jesus. And, so a rating review would get me out of bed. You can also jump onto adventurefittravel.com/podcast. You can join up for the mailing list, like we said at the start. And you can keep up to date with all the shit that Bill and I have going on, especially podcast-related stuff, by going to the show notes, which is down below of the podcast icon. And Bill is now going to talk to you about Our sponsors.
So guys, make sure you check out True Pride. True Pride are that wealth creation service that you want to check out. Save yourself $600 a month at the cost of $97 a month. You get a joining fee waived if you book a call through www.truepride.com.au/ADVF. Carve also, guys, check out Carve. If you want to upscale your business or you want to get your time back in your life and just outsource some of the stuff you don't want to be doing, head to Carve, www.carve.ph/ADVF and get 10 hours free on any project, VA or side project, part-time, small project through Carve. You can get them both done. And
just by the way, the PH in that actually stands for Philippines.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool. That's cool. You know how like we have .au?
Yeah.
And that's Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Well, what's Com then? Commonwealth Bank. Moving on.
And don't forget to check out www.adventurefittravel.com and use the code RADIO to get 10% off on our holidays.
Until next week.
See you later.
Discovery Roger, go for deploy.